Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to talk through two separate strategies to improve big toe extension, and we're going to talk about why we may choose to sequence one strategy before the other. Okay, so big toe extension, let's talk about the mechanics of big toe extension first. Now, in this strategy here, we have a towel positioned under the big toe, and what that does is it pre-positions the big toe in extension. Okay, and we use a towel here because it has some yield or some give to it. It's a little bit more comfortable for the client. But when we look at big toe extension is a very important feature during the propulsive phase of gait, because that big toe extension will couple with a plantar flexion of the first metatarsal. And that plantar flexion of the first metatarsal is very important to facilitate that supination of the midfoot. And that supination of the midfoot facilitates a more rigid foot for push-off. And that will couple then proximally with an inversion of the calcaneus and a plantar flexion of the ankle. So if we have a client with a limitation in big toe extension, we want to organize the segments in such a way to help facilitate those segmental behaviors. So we want to allow for some plantar flexion of the ankle, some inversion of the calcaneus, some supination of the midfoot, and that will all help to facilitate that plantar flexion of the first metatarsal to help facilitate that big toe extension. Once we get the clients into a position where they're just short of their barrier, we'll have the client build pressure down through the big toe itself. So we're loading the big toe flexors at length, but with that segmental behavior proximally. We'll typically hold that between 20 and 30 seconds and repeat that for 3 to 4 sets. After every set, we're challenging the ankle into a little bit more plantar flexion to try and expand that big toe extension range. Okay. The key thing I want you to understand here is that we will organize the segments in such a way to facilitate that big toe extension first. Okay, so if you had a client with a limitation in big toe extension, we'll want to work on that first before we challenge the big toe extension with more of an ankle dorsiflexion bias. Because when we move into an ankle dorsiflexion bias, we have to appreciate what happens when what happens distally to the ankle when it comes to ankle dorsiflexion. What kind of coupling behaviors will be expressed with ankle dorsiflexion? Ankle dorsiflexion will typically couple with an eversion of the calcaneus, a pronation of the midfoot, which couples with more of a dorsiflexion of the first metatarsal, and that couples then even more distally with a flexion of the toe. So it challenges things from a segmental standpoint. But what it also does is it challenges the eccentric capacity of the muscular tissues that cross the ankle, particularly the flexor hallucis longus in this case. That will be important when it comes to big toe extension. And you may measure big toe extension in more of an ankle dorsiflex position as well. Sometimes if you have a limitation in both, we want to work with ankle plantar flexion first. But if you have no limitation in ankle plantar flexion via big toe extension, then we can jump straight into this strategy here, because it is likely secondary to a limitation in the eccentric capacity of the flexor hallucis longus. We could still work with ankle plantar flexion bias first to help, give to reduce the coordinative challenge of building pressure via big toe flexion when it's in more of an extended position, and then work into this, particularly if the client is just not used to building pressure via big toe flexion in an extended position. So what we'll do is we'll pre-position the big toe in extension here, using a block against the wall to give some space for the knee to pass over, because we want to flex that tibia here. Now, this is a client with an experience of pain, a current experience of pain through the medial ankle here. And when we brought him into this position here, he felt a discomfort through the medial portion of the ankle. So we want to bring them up to that point of discomfort and then back off slightly. Because you can see here, we're not really getting much tibial flexion, but we want to work towards expanding that range of tibial flexion, which will facilitate more of a lengthening capacity of the flexor hallucis longus, because we pre-position that big toe in extension here. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to build pressure via big toe flexion. So we're loading the big toe flexors at length here. Okay. And then hold for 20 to 30 seconds and continue to gradually expand that range of motion via the ankle. Okay. But ideally, we want to make sure that we have the capacity to extend the big toe with more of an ankle plantar flexion bias first. So, like I said, if we want to facilitate big toe extension, we'll start with more of an ankle plantar flexion bias. If we wanted to challenge the capacity to extend the big toe, then we can progress towards more of an ankle dorsiflexion bias because of the segmental behaviors associated with ankle plantarflexion and ankle dorsiflexion.